I'm making this video, this audio, this newsletter, this call to the public while my children are sleeping and while I'm wondering and reading about what sort of world they're going to inherit in the next couple of decades. And it kind of terrifies me, if I'm being honest. And I ask myself, how can faith and reason coexist in this world? How can our children inherit a better world than what we currently have? And God willing, they will. But it leaves me as a man, as a father, as a husband with more questions than answers. It leaves me turning to my Bible and finding a lot of hope. But inevitably, when I close that Bible, I need to go back to my family and I need to provide some sort of answers, some sort of confidence, some sort of reassurance that everything's going to be okay. And I believe it will. I do believe it will. But I also know that what the Bible promises us is that this life, the life of a Christian, is not an easy life. This is not the life to choose if you want acceptance by everybody, if you want the easy path. In fact, it's the opposite. We need only look so far as the first apostles to see that to be a follower of Christ means that the road ahead is going to be a bit challenging. And so in some respects, perhaps it's a good thing when we face struggles, as Paul told us. It gives us a chance to stretch our spiritual muscle and prove our spiritual strength in a world that is admittedly handed over to the devil. When I find myself in this video, this podcast, this newsletter asking again, can faith and reason coexist? And I have that question as sort of a guiding question. But it kind of bothers me if I'm being honest. It kind of bothers me if I'm being honest because it implies that the two are opposed. Can faith and reason coexist? Well, the question demands itself. Well, are they not coexisting already? And I think our secular world would say no, they are not coexisting. Faith and reason are diametrically opposed. And therein lies a problem, as far as I can tell. It implies that to have faith is to not have reason, to have the opposite of reason. To be a reasonable person means you are a person who rejects faith because faith is unreasonable. To me, that is a premise I am unwilling to accept. Now, I don't really understand why the faith and reason argument is somewhat valid in our society, because what it implies is that faith cannot explain enough to satisfy the pro-reason crowd that faith is legitimate. They will cite things like the Big Bang Theory and evolution while dismissing things like creationism. And the obvious funny part about the obvious double standard is they'll say that you can't prove creationism while they can't prove anything that predated the Big Bang Theory. Indeed, the science world, which touts evolution, which touts the Big Bang Theory, and which rejects faith, is a world that believed that the earth was the center of the universe. It is a world that believed the earth was flat for a very long time. And so in this world where I find myself saying, if I had to choose between faith and reason, if I had to choose between logic as understood here on earth and the word as given to me in the Bible, I'm choosing the word every time. You see, to me, what we're setting up here is a situation where people need to choose which camp they are in. As President George W. Bush said after 9/11, you're either with us or you're with the terrorists. That was obviously a very reductionist and scary way of looking at things. But in a sense, you're either with Christ or you are without Christ. You are either with Jesus or without. And I think as a man of 2025, a man with several children, happily married, good career, who finds myself having to explain some of these things as my children are getting a little bit older. The reason crowd cannot satisfy the questions that I have. It just can't. I can explain things like death and saying they're not here anymore, they're dead, they're gone, but I can't explain where they went to. I can't explain a soul using the reason crowd to differentiate what made this person who recently died separate or different from somebody else who has died. I can't explain whether or not we're ever going to be reunited with that person again. I cannot explain what happens after this life, if anything, using the pro-reason side alone. What I must use is the faith side. And for me, that's very, very reassuring. For me, knowing that God has rooms in heaven for all of us is very reassuring. Believing that we are all separated by God, by our original sin, and our goal in this life is to reconnect ourselves with God is very reassuring. And being able to look at my children, to know that they are created in the image of God, to see just the tiniest amounts of His beauty in each one of them, and to believe that at some point, God willing, I will be connected with God, the epicenter of all that goodness and beauty, kindness and love. It's a pretty reassuring feeling. So I don't have a call to action here, just a reassurance for those of you who are maybe struggling with something similar. How do we balance our reason with our faith in this world which seemingly has lost both of them? I think the best thing to do is to keep in the Word, to know that the Bible is true, to know that Jesus loves us, and that there is hope for an afterlife.